Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So this is the part 2, the sewing part of the previous pattern video that I posted. I hope you've watched the part 1 of this video before watching this one. If you haven't, I'll leave a link in the description box below. If this is your first time here and you haven't subscribed, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're already an existing subscriber, thank you so much for the engagement on my channel. Let's get started. So guys, before we get started, I want to show you a minor adjustment I made on my pattern. Remember I added 3/4 inches to the hip for ease. I reduced that to 1/2 inch later on. So just do that on yours. So now I'm just showing you my pieces. That's my back. I have 1/2 inch on the center seam, 1/2 at the hem, 1 at the side, and 1/2 inch all around. And then this is my sleeve. So I opened my sleeve because I realized I had more fabric and I wanted more bulk at the end. So I opened my sleeve up so I can get more volume. If you want, you can. If you don't have enough fabric, just leave yours the way we drafted the pattern. Then this is my front and my back. Remember, I told you I'm going to use this piece to cut both my front and my back. So my back is going to have a seam at the center. So I have 4 pieces, 2 for the front and 2 for the back. I have 1/2 inch at the top, 1/2 inch at the hem, and 1 inch on the side. So I'm just showing you my center front. Guys, please pay attention to the side dart. If you can see, I drafted, you measure 1 inch in from the tip of your side dart and then connect that to the sides. That's where you get your dart from. You don't take your dart exactly from the beginning. So I'm just showing you my button plackets. I cut it exactly the way it was on the paper, no extra allowance or anything. I only increased the length at the hem just in case, so I have excess and I'm not short. And then I have 4 pieces for my strips, 1 inch wide, 4 inches for my strips. You can make that as long as 30 inches, 40 inches, whatever. You can trim out the excess later. This is my cuff. I have 4 pieces of that. So guys, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is marking my hip line, making a notch on my hip line and on the center front and on the side. Guys, if you're used to me on this channel, you know I always do this. So when I'm assembling, it's easy for me. So I just make small notches on that hip line on the side, and I also do it on the center. So when I'm piecing them together, I know where the hip starts from, and I start pinning from there all the way to the end. So now I'm just marking so I know the back, the wrong side of the pieces, because this fabric everywhere looks the same. So I'm marking with my chalk so that when I'm assembling, I know this is the back. I'm also marking so I know the top of my piece. I know the top and I know the hem, so I don't confuse it, because everything is looking very, very similar right now. So I'm just marking. So make marks on yours so you know. So I'm taking off my pins and then I'm going to assemble my pieces. So I'm taking the first 2 pieces, right sides together, and I'll just place that down. So I'm taking those 2 pieces going to be my front and the other 2 for my back. So now for the back, I will hold the 2 pieces together, right sides together, and I'll just pin that. Guys, from the notch you made at the hip, always start pinning from that notch. It makes things easier for you, and your hip will not be one way up or one way down. Then I'm going to pin all the way down. So that's just what I'm doing now. So I'm done pinning that. I'm going to sew my 1/2 inch allowance away from the back. Then I'm going to open that and put that. So guys, I'm just pinning everything down before I go and sew. So I'm doing the sides. I've placed the back on top of the front, right sides facing each other. I'm starting again from the hip. I'll pin that, and then I'll pin all the way down and pin all the way to the top. This is for the one side of. Then I'm doing this on the other side. I'm starting pinning from the hip again. Then I'll pin all the way up and I'll pin all the way down. So I'm going to sew away my 1 inch allowance I have on the side. After sewing that, I'll also sew the seam on the center back, but I'm not sewing the front. I hope you understand what I mean. I'm not sewing the center front. I'm only sewing the back and the sides. So that's what I'm showing you here. I'm going to sew the seam on the center and the seam on the sides. Just the seam at the center of the back, yes, that seam, and the ones on the side. So I'm done sewing that, and I'm just going to show you guys what it looks like. You can see I finished joining the sides, my 1 inch on the side. So now what I'm going to do is open that up. I'm going to open that up and iron that flat. I'm going to iron that down so I can run lines on the side where my strings will pass through. So I'm just going to open that up and iron that down. So you can see I'm done ironing that. To open that down, and then I'm going to run seams on both sides. So before I do that, I decided to do my strings, so I just fold that into two, sew it, and then turn it inside out. 4 pieces. I have 4 pieces for that. So now on my sides, I'm done sewing that down. Guys, you see what I just did? I opened it up and then I run seams on the side of it, on top of it. Please make sure you serge your pieces. Make sure you serge your sides before you do it, so that your fabric does not unravel. Use an overlocker to overlock it before you sew that down. So at this point, guys, I'm just showing you my strings. I'm done doing that, and I'm going to keep that on the side. So for my main piece, for the front and the back, the top piece rather, I'm going to sew the darts, and then I'll come back and show you guys the darts, and I'll join the seam at the center back. So I'm done joining the seams, and I've held on my darts. You can see my darts. You can see them. I'm done sewing down my darts. So now I'm going to be sewing down the sides and the shoulder. So I have 1 inch allowance on the side. I'm going to hold the shoulders and the sides. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back and show you guys what it looks like. So I'm done doing that. You can see my seams. I've joined my shoulders and I've joined the side. So now I'm going to open that down, and then I'm bringing my piece. Guys, so I put my strings inside my the holes for the strings, but I removed that later on because I realized that I've not done the hem, and I wanted to close up the hem before I put the strings back. So that's why I didn't show you guys when I was doing it, because I'm going to put the strings again. So please don't put the strings on yours before you join to the top part. Please don't put. So I'll show you guys when I was removing the seam. So what I'm doing is just pinning side to side. I'm pinning side to side. I pin the center seam to the center back seam to the center back seam, the side to the side, the darts, open that flat, just like that, guys. So when I'm sewing, I will not sew that part where I will not sew the sides. I won't sew the side down. I'll show you what I mean. I'm not going to sew the side down because I want my string to pass through before I close that. So this is me. I'm done joining that. So I'm showing you what I mean. Do you see that part? Yes. When you sew, you get to that part, raise your machine and then skip it. Those 2 sides, yes, those parts. Your string is going to come out from there. So I'm not going to sew that down. So this is what I'm doing. So that I meant when I said I was going to remove my strings, because I have not done the hem. So I'm just pulling my strings out. So please don't put yours before you join the top and the bottom. Don't put yours. So I'm going to keep that aside. And when I'm done with the hem, before I put it back, remember, don't close your sides. Don't close this part that I'm showing you. Don't close this part where the strings are supposed to be. Don't close that part until we have put the string through before we close it. So don't close yours. Just leave that open. So the next thing we're going to be doing is our bottom placket. So I'm just removing the pins. I'm going to take the 2-piece and I'm going to iron fusible hairstay underneath the both of them. I'm going to iron hairstay onto both of them, or paper gum or whatever it is you have. Just attach it to it, iron it on it, so it makes your fabric much more solid. So after doing that, I'm going to fold. This is what I'm doing with my hands. I'll fold half and half on the sides, and then I'll fold that into half again, and I'll iron that. I'll fold half on the sides, iron that down, and I'll fold into half. Guys, when you're folding, please make sure that one part of it is longer than the other side. Let me show you what I mean. So you can see I'm done ironing. I have half and half inch fold on the sides, and then I folded that into 2. So on my fold, 1 is longer than 1. 1 is longer than 1. I will explain why I said 1 should be longer than 1 and what I mean by 1 is longer than 1. So now I'm going to be attaching this to my main dress. So I'm going to be taking this now. I'll be attaching the shorter side. The shorter side, guys. I'll pin that half onto my starting from the neckline all the way to the hem. So I'm going to pin that down, and I'll sew on that half-inch fold that I folded, because I have half-inch allowance on my center front and then half-inch allowance now on this placket. So I'll be sewing that half-inch. Right sides together, guys, please. Right sides together. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm pinning that down. I'll do this on one side, and I'm going to take the other bottom placket and do it on the other one. So I'm just holding that down. So I'm doing it on the other side. Exactly what I just did to that first side, I'll do it to the other side. Pin that down. And then I'm going to go and sew it, and I'll come back and show you guys what it looks like. So guys, I'm done sewing. Yours should be looking like this when you're done sewing. So now I'm going to fold that in and cover it up with the second half inch allowance that I ironed. You see what I mean? Flip that over and put it on top. So now this is what why I said the one side should be longer, because if they are equal, you will not have enough room to sew on. So please make sure when you're ironing, it comes out by at least a 1/4 inch when you fold your placket into half. That's after folding the first ½ inch on both sides. When you're flipping over to fold it into two, that's into half, make sure one part comes out more than the other side. I'll explain what that means. So now I'm just pinning it over. I'm securing the allowance, or rather what I've sewn inside, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to sew top stitch from the top. Do you see what I mean? I'm going to top stitch from the top. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Flip it inside, use the ½ inch allowance to cover the one I've just sewn, pin that down, flip it over and sew on the top stitch. So this is what I meant when I said a little bit of it should come out. You see, that's what I'm showing you. If it doesn't come out, you can't sew on top. So please make sure that when you're folding your placket into two, one side is longer than the other one. Exactly. So now I'm going to sew that and I'll show you guys what it looks like. So guys, I'm done top stitching. You can see my seam is only showing on the inside. It's not showing at the front. It's only showing on the wrong side. It's not showing at the front. So that's what yours should look like. Next thing I'm going to do is put my collar. Guys, I already have a video up for how to fix and how to draft and fix your collar, and I'll be leaving a link for that in the description box. So I'm not going to be showing that part in this video. I'm just going to show you my collar already done. But before that, I'm folding it so I can trim off the excess allowance of my placket. I told you, please make your placket extra long so that you're not short and it doesn't become too short for you. So I'm just marking that a straight line and I'm trimming out the excess. And then I'm going to fix my collar. So I'm just showing you the collar before I even put it, because I have a detailed tutorial on how to do this. Every step is included there. So I'm just showing you guys the collar, and then I'm done fixing it on my dress. So I'll leave a link to that in the description box so you can check that and watch that video. So I'm done fixing my collar. And next thing I'm going to do is fold my seam. So guys, before you fold your seam, please lose a bit of that sewing that, you know, when you open your seam to the sides and you sew on top, just lose it a bit so that you can be able to fold each of the seams individually, and then you close and do back what we just did before. Let me explain what I mean. As the seam is open like this now, I'm just trimming out the excess on the bottom of the placket. So if you have excess, trim that out first before you fold in your allowance. So I'm doing the same thing on the other side and I'm trimming that out. So now what I'm going to do, you see, I've separated my pieces. I'm going to be closing each of these. I want to close that first, then before I flip it over. So I'm folding my ½ inch allowance, my 3/4 inch allowance into two. Just fold your hem into two. Very tiny bit, and then sew that. So what I mean is I'm going to be sewing the hem of each of the pieces individually before I join it at the side. So if you want to fold the hem of your individual pieces before you join, that's fine, whichever way you prefer. So after folding that into two, I'm going to join up my sides and then open up my side seams and sew that down to create holes, to create space for my strings. So I'm done doing that. I'm showing you my strings. So to pass my strings through, this is what I do. I just take the strings, I cut a small hole at the side, pass my bobby pin through, and then I push the bobby pin through with my strings in it all the way to the top. It's going to come out at that hole, that space that we left at the top. Do you see? So I'll pull out and make sure that I have a bit of it coming out. Please make sure you have a bit of it coming out. So I'll secure that with a pin. I'll do the same thing to all 4 holes. And then I'll come back and I'll show you guys what it looks like. Guys, 4 holes. 4 holes. That's what you will have. 4 strings for 4 channels. And you can only get these channels, remember, if you open your side seams, the seam you've made, iron it open and then sew down. After passing my strings, I'm going to close back that space that I left when I was joining the top to the bottom. Pass your strings and then close that up. So I'm done closing that up, and I've trimmed out the excess of the string at the joint between the top and the bottom. So now I've pulled my strings, I've adjusted it to how much gathers I want on the side, and I'm just tying that off to secure it so it doesn't unravel. So when you've adjusted and pulled to how much you want to pull, guys, you can pull on your body too, whichever. I was just doing that so I can show you guys. So time to fix my sleeve. I'm making a cut on the center of the sleeve. If you're used to my videos, you know I always mark the front of my sleeve so that I can know the front when I'm fixing the front, when I'm fixing my sleeves. So I always use a chalk to indicate that this part is the front and not the back. So I'm going to make running stitches on the, I'm going to fold the hem into two, the hem of the sleeve. I'm going to make a notch there so I can know the center. And then I'm going to make running stitches on the hem, on both of the pieces. On both pieces, running stitches on the hem. And I'm going to do that. I'll come back and show you guys. Then for my cuffs, I opened the pieces and I took two of it and I ironed hairstay onto two of it. So now I'm going to take one of the piece with hairstay and one piece without, right sides fitting each other. Remember, the hairstay is on the wrong side, not the right side. Now on the one of the piece that has no hairstay, on the one without the hairstay rather, the piece without the hairstay, I'm folding 1/2 inch at the top. I'm folding 1/2 inch at the top. The folding should be facing you, not inward. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to pin that down. Fold again, pin that down. So I'm going to sew that, just like my hand motion, I'm going to sew that. I'll do the same thing to the other one, to the other cuff piece, and I'll sew that motion just like that all the way to the top. I'm not going to sew where the fold is. I'll just sew it on top of the fold all the way to the top. So I'm trimming out the excess allowance so that when I flip it over it can lay flat. So after doing that, I'm going to flip it inside out, just using something to poke out the edge so that it comes out sharp. So I'll do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to bring my sleeve, I'll pull the gather stitches that I have at the hem inward, and then I'll fit center to the center with the side of the hairstay facing the back of the fabric, facing the wrong side of the fabric. Do you understand what I'm saying? The side with the hairstay facing the wrong side of the fabric, not the right side of the fabric. Oh, the side with the hairstay, the side that does not have the 1/2 inch folded in. At the end, I'm going to be folding my 1 inch allowance that I have into two, facing the wrong side, guys, facing the wrong side, not the right side of the fabric. Do you understand? This part I'm sewing the part with the hairstay to is the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm just pinning that down. I hope this makes sense, guys. If you want to see a detailed video of how I fix my cuff, please let me know. If you don't understand this part I'm doing, I'm folding the ends into two, attaching that end to the end, pinning that down. What I mean by folding into two is folding like I want to sew my hem. How I sew my hem when you fold your hem into two to sew, but I'm doing to the ends of the sleeve. So I'm going to sew that 1/2 inch down. I'll do the same thing to both sides, to the other side, and then I'll show you guys what that looks like. So this is it. I'm done sewing. This is what I mean. So now you flip it inside. The way we folded your placket, how you secured inside and sew, that's what I'm doing. I fold it down, pin that down, and I'll sew on top of that. So like the bottom placket with top stitch, but on this one, you're sewing on the right side. You're top stitching on the right side. So now I'm done doing that. I'm going to fold my fabric to close up my side. I'll fold that into two. I'll sew and I'll stop somewhere there. Do you see what I'm doing? Close that up, fold it to the side, and I'll sew my side allowance on my sleeve, and I'll stop before I get to the end, just a little bit, so your hand can have an opening. So I'm done doing that. You can see my top stitch on my right side. On my right side, you can see my top stitch on my right side. And you can see the left side. You can see my wrong side. and then you can see my right side on the inside. You see the space I meant when I said don't close it all the way to the end. You need a little bit of opening for your pin to pass through. So now I'm just going to fold that down and I'll stitch that. Do you see what I'm doing? Fold that inwards and I'll stitch that down just to secure it. So now I'm going to be attaching my sleeve to the main body. So if you are used to my videos, you know I always pin my side seam to my side seam. I pin my center to my shoulder seam. And then I pin the fronts. For my back, guys, there's, you know, I always mark the front and the back. So I make sure the front is on the front of the main outfit and the back of the sleeve is at the back part of the sleeve. Now, if you're used to my videos, you know that my back, I always make a running stitch on the back part of my sleeve. Because like I explained, the back armhole and the front armhole are not the same. The back armhole is always smaller. So I always make running stitches so I can pull in some of that fabric and it just sits perfectly in the armhole. So guys, I explained how to fix my sleeve into the armhole in multiple of my videos. So you can watch any of my videos with sleeves so you can understand better. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And then guys, I'm done attaching my sleeve. Can you see what it's looking like? Can you see? It's done. So now I'm going to put make buttonholes on my sleeve and attach my buttons. Make buttonholes on my plackets and attach the buttons. Guys, so I didn't do that on this because I did not yet have the buttons I wanted to use, but I just wanted to do this tutorial so I can show you guys. So I'm going to secure it with pins and then I'll show you guys what it looks like. And with that, our outfit is ready. So please guys, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, leave me comments, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.